A 7-2 Supreme Court ruling just hit, and a lot of gun owners still do not understand how big it is. If you build, buy, carry, transport, or even talk to police around a homemade gun or parts kit, this could change the risk you face fast. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed? Because what I'm about to reveal could keep you from making a mistake that turns a normal day into a criminal case. Hit that button now. Here's what just happened. In a case called Bondi versus VanDerStok, the Supreme Court upheld a federal rule on so-called ghost guns. That means the court said the ATF can treat at least some gun parts kits and unfinished frames or receivers like firearms under federal law, and that matters a lot more than most people think. Because this is not just about what sits on a workbench in your garage. It's about what counts as a gun when a dealer logs it, when a buyer fills out paperwork, when a serial number is required, and when police find it during an investigation. Most people hear ghost gun case and think this only affects hobby builders. That is a huge mistake. If you own a privately made firearm, if you ever bought an unfinished frame, or if you keep parts in your car, home, or range bag, you need to understand what changed, what did not change, and where people are most likely to get burned. First, let me break down the ruling in plain English. The Supreme Court did not say every block of metal is now a gun. That is not what happened. The court also did not say the government can regulate every random pile of parts. What the court did say is this. Under the Federal Gun Control Act, some unfinished gun parts and some weapon kits can still count as firearms if they can be quickly and easily turned into working guns. That phrase matters. Quickly and easily. The court focused on products that were close enough to the finish line that a person could readily convert them. In other words, if it looks less like raw material and more like a near-complete gun, the government may regulate it like one. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The lawsuit was what lawyers call a facial challenge. That just means the people challenging the rule wanted the whole rule thrown out everywhere, in all situations. The court said no. The rule is not invalid across the board. Why? Because at least some of the kits covered by the rule clearly fit within the old federal gun law. So the challenge failed. That is a huge detail, and here's why. The court did not bless every possible ATF decision forever. It left room for future fights over specific products. So if you hear someone say, the Supreme Court ruled all unfinished parts are firearms now, that is wrong. And if someone says, nothing changed, this only applies to one weird kit, that is wrong too. The truth is in the middle, and that middle is exactly where people get trapped. Second, let's talk about why this matters for your rights. Federal gun law has always cared about a few key things. Who can buy a gun? Who can sell one? Whether background checks apply, whether serial numbers apply, whether records must be kept. This ruling strengthens the government's position that some build kits and unfinished frames can trigger those rules. So if a product qualifies under the rule, the old idea of it's just parts may not protect you anymore. That changes how dealers handle transfers. It changes how businesses sell kits. And it changes how prosecutors may look at possession, transfer, and tracing after a crime. But here's the crazy part. A lot of people think this is only about selling. It is not. Once something is treated like a firearm under federal law, it can affect what happens later when police encounter it. Imagine you are pulled over. You have a handgun in the car. But it is a privately made gun with no serial number, or it started as a kit that you thought was outside federal law. The officer may not know the full history on the roadside. But the moment that firearm enters evidence, or gets inspected, or gets run through a later investigation, the legal questions start stacking up. Where did it come from? Was it transferred through a dealer when required? Was it marked if a licensee took it into inventory? Was it lawfully possessed under state law? Did the owner assume homemade meant unregulated? This is where simple misunderstandings turn into expensive legal problems. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the ruling created a brand new national duty to tell police about a gun during a traffic stop. It did not. Let me say that again. This case did not create a new nationwide duty to inform an officer that you are carrying. State laws on disclosure still control that. Your concealed carry laws still depend heavily on your state. Search and seizure rules still depend on the Fourth Amendment and state law. So no, this case did not rewrite every police encounter rule in America overnight. But it could still change police encounters in a real-world way because it changes what the government may treat as a firearm in the first place. And if the item in question is legally a firearm, then the paperwork, possession rules, transfer rules, and tracing rules attached to firearms suddenly matter a whole lot more. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video about the 5 words that can protect you when police start asking questions about your gun. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Third, let's walk through some real-life examples, because this is the part nobody's talking about. Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Say a person buys a near-complete pistol frame and a matching kit online. He believes he bought just parts, so he assumes there is no federal issue. He finishes it, keeps it in his truck, and months later gets stopped for a broken taillight. Maybe the stop itself is simple. Maybe the officer never even writes a ticket. But if that firearm is later found during a lawful search, or taken after an arrest for something unrelated, or sent through a forensic process, the question becomes whether that item should have been treated as a firearm earlier in the chain. If the answer is yes, the person may have bigger problems than he ever expected. Now imagine a second situation. A privately made firearm goes to a licensed dealer or gunsmith for certain kinds of work. Under ATF rules, there are situations where a federal firearms licensee may have to mark and record that firearm. If that same gun later gets transferred to someone other than the original person, background check and paperwork issues may come into play. Again, the point here is not that every homemade firearm is automatically illegal. That is false. The point is that once a gun or part falls inside the federal definition, the normal rules can attach fast. This is why the court's ruling matters far beyond the online checkout page. Fourth, let me explain why police encounters may feel different after this case, even if the written stop rules in your state did not change. Officers on the street do not make final Supreme Court interpretations in the moment. They react to what they see. If they see an unserialized gun, a suspicious parts kit, or a weapon that looks privately made, that may raise more questions now, not fewer. It may lead to more caution, more temporary detention, more evidence review, and more calls to supervisors or federal partners. That does not mean every stop becomes lawful just because an officer sees a strange gun. Police still need to follow the Constitution. But from your side, the practical risk goes up when the item at issue is something the federal government can argue is a firearm under this rule. This is the part that shocked me. A lot of viewers think the safest answer is to argue on the roadside. Big mistake. If an officer is confused about your gun, the side of the road is not where you win that debate. Your goal is to avoid turning confusion into probable cause, or probable cause into more charges. That means keeping your hands visible, following commands, not reaching toward the gun, and not giving long explanations because you saw something online. Most people think talking more helps. The truth is, talking more often creates new facts the government can later use against you. You do not have to be rude. You do have to be smart. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. Fifth, let's talk about what this ruling did not do, because this is where fear takes over and bad information spreads. It did not cancel the Second Amendment. It did not outlaw building every firearm at home. It did not say every unfinished receiver is automatically regulated. And it did not mean police can search your car whenever they hear the words ghost gun. The court was narrower than that. It said the ATF rule is not invalid on its face. That means the rule can stand, at least for products that clearly fit the federal law's language. Future cases can still fight over edge cases. So if a YouTube thumbnail tells you, the court just banned all home builds, slow down. That is not what the ruling says. But wait, there's something even more important. This case shows where the pressure point is going forward. The battle is shifting from broad theory to product-specific facts. How complete was the frame? How easy was the conversion? What tools were needed? How much time? What exactly was sold in the box? Those details may now decide whether a person is holding raw material, a kit, or a federally regulated firearm. That is why lazy advice is dangerous. Two products can look similar online and create very different legal outcomes. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the gun owners who want these updates before the next big ruling drops. Click subscribe. Sixth, so what should you do right now? First, know what you actually own. Not what your buddy called it, not what some random post claimed. Know whether your item is a completed firearm, a privately made firearm, an unfinished frame, or a kit that may be readily converted. Second, know your state law, because state rules on carry, transport, duty to inform, prohibited places, and registration can be stricter than federal law. Third, be extra careful with transfers. A lot of legal trouble starts when someone says, "I'm just handing it to a friend," without thinking through whether a dealer, paperwork, or other rules may apply. Fourth, if a licensed dealer or gunsmith gets involved, understand that marking and record-keeping rules may matter in ways they did not before. And fifth, maybe most important of all, have a police encounter plan before you need one. Have you ever wondered why some stops stay calm and others go bad fast? It is usually because one person starts guessing. Do not guess. Know where your documents are. Know your state's carry disclosure rule. Know whether your firearm is secured the way your state requires. Know that homemade does not mean invisible to the law, and know that silence is often safer than storytelling. Here's what could happen if you ignore this. You could assume a parts kit is outside gun law, transport it casually, get questioned after a stop, say the wrong thing, and only later learn the government sees that item very differently than you did. That does not mean you are guilty. It does mean you may now need a lawyer, money, and months of your life to sort out a problem you could have avoided with better information. Laws change fast, like really fast. Subscribe now because the next video breaks down exactly what to say and what not to say when police ask if you have a gun in the car. So here's the bottom line. The Supreme Court's 7-2 ruling in Bondi versus VanDerStok did not erase your gun rights, but it did make clear that some unfinished gun parts and build kits can be treated like firearms under federal law. And once that happens, the rules around sales, transfers, records, and police encounters can get serious in a hurry. If this helped you see the danger before it becomes your problem, hit subscribe right now and stay with this channel. I spend the time digging through these rulings so you can protect yourself and your family with clear, simple information. And one last thing, this video is for education only. It is not legal advice, and if you're dealing with a real gun case or a police investigation, talk to a qualified attorney in your state as soon as possible. See 2296 Script Scene Splitter AI GitHub.